Hi, welcome to the Augmentation of Man with Kent and Renee Miller,
Today,
where we are bringing the future. Kent's got a cold, hopefully it's a cold.
Yeah, today we're going to talk about ancient graves and why we need them. And many of you have been waiting for this information, and we're going to give it to you today.
And we're also going to load up this link on at the bottom of the video in the comment section so that you can print it out. It's a lot of information. We're going to try and just make it a little more brief than the actual handout is so that you can read it yourself.
Yes. So we can go back to early man or where the ancient grains actually came from. And man chose to grow their own grains, eat them, and they were quite nourishable. But in the 1940s, wheat was chosen as the crop for a growing population. They realized the population was growing so fast they needed a crop that would sustain the population. So out of that, genetically modified wheat came about. And having it genetically modified create gluten problems for many, many people. And we see today such a high gluten intolerance.
And this is because gluten, if I remember correctly, was increased by 6-fold in the modern US wheat. Now, I have heard reports of people saying they could go to Europe and eat the wheat in Europe and not have the problems that they have here in the States. So it may be that in Europe, they're not farming with this genetically modified wheat that has a very high amount of gluten in it.
The question they ask now, what are ancient grains?
Mm-hmm. And before we get to that, I just want to say that a lot of this genetic alteration had to do with farming practices and moving into big farming. And so
corporate farming.
Right. And so in doing so, big farming does not replenish the soil with the nutrients that the plants have taken out, or they do not replenish it to the extent it should be. And certainly it's with chemical fertilizers instead of natural nutrients that they add back into the ground. And so this is shown into, it is reflected into the crops that we have today, where nutritionally they're about a third of what they were, say, in the 1950s.
Again, I'm going to ask the question, what are ancient grains?
And so ancient grains are ancient wheats, grains, and pseudo cereals that have been around for thousands of years and have not been adulterated or genetically altered.
Well, wheats include what?
So there's 3 categories. The true wheats include spelt, kamut, and Khorasan, which is a somebody brought over the kamut here to the United States, and they have obtained their own what's the word? It's like their own trademark on that particular grain here in the States, and it's Khorasan. They're the same, one and the same. Einkorn and farro, which also goes by emmer. And so then the second category is grains.
Right.
And the grains include millet, barley, teff, oats, and sorghum. We're going to get more into this a little bit.
Yeah, and then the pseudo cereals
that are actually seeds.
Yeah.
But people cook them and eat them like cereal.
Right, which you're familiar with, which is canola and quinoa. Okay, I always pronounce it canola. Quinoa and amaranth and buckwheat and of course chia. You're all familiar with those particular
most people are familiar with those. The teff, I don't think too many people have heard of. Einkorn, emmer, farro, those are a little more uncommon. I have to say at this point too, is that a lot of these you can't buy at your regular grocery store. So when you go looking for them, just get online and search for them, okay? You'll find them online, and most of it through Amazon, although I'm finding prices are the same for a lot of these things on Amazon as they are going directly to the producer.
Yeah.
And so you might find that you're paying the same price and you're not feeding the big corporations.
So in general, ancient grains are higher in protein and vitamins and minerals and other micronutrients than the modern wheat that has been increased in gluten.
And
a lot has been
genetically
taken out of the
modified.
soil. Yeah, so you don't have the vitamins, minerals that the soil feeds the plant
Mhm.
with these new ancient grains. What you're
I
trying
think-
to do is find the ancient grains where the seed goes back thousands or hundreds of thousands or thousands of years,
Mhm.
and try to use that.
Yeah, and sometimes what we find is that farmers who farm organically or farmers who are concerned about preserving ancient grains, that they're also concerned about the soil health and replenishing the nutrients in the soil so that you're getting a product that is more nutritious than what big farming has to offer. And so in general, ancient grains contain vitamins, minerals, micronutrients that help reduce the risk of heart disease, stroke. Type 2 diabetes is a big one with the ancient grains, reducing the risk of type 2 diabetes, reducing cholesterol. They improve the density of bones. Some of these are used to make collagen, which help improve healing of wounds, but also collagen is in our joints, around our joints that form the connective tissue. And collagen is very important in our bodies. They help improve immunity. They assist with neurological activity, reduce inflammation. That's a big one throughout most of these ancient grains, is the reduction of inflammation, which when you compare it to modern wheat is going to increase inflammation in the body, which leads to disease and cancer, arthritis, things like that. And what else?
You need those particular things to help heal your own body.
Yeah.
And not depend on the medicines that are out there, but you need to eat healthy to help heal your body so the microorganisms can go to work and increase your immune system.
Yeah, so it's allowing your body to work much more optimally. These ancient grains also help to repair DNA, regulate blood sugar. Some of them actually increase blood flow by allowing the blood vessels to dilate. And when you reduce the cholesterol and the plaque on the inside of the arteries, you have a bigger lumen inside your artery, a bigger space that allows for more blood to flow. And they contain chemicals that reduce inflammation. Many of them, this inflammation can lead to many other diseases in the body.
Yeah, and now we're going to remember when you begin to get on these ancient grains, 1-2 weeks, you're not going to come, oh, I feel much better. You'll start to feel it after a couple of months of taking these ancient grains, where your body gets used to it, and you won't just become all well all at once. It takes time. Everything takes time.
And it also depends on what else you're eating in your diet.
Yeah.
So
if you have ancient grains and a couple of bowls of ice cream, it's not going to work.
And we'll get into some of the recommendations by our spiritual guidance Many of these ancient grains contain antioxidants that help reduce cellular damage and disease and allow the body to heal. Some of them contain specific nutrients and chemicals that provide other health benefits that are unique to that grain. And we'll also get into that.
Yeah, let's begin with the ancient wheats and what they can do.
Okay, and I think what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to share the screen, and that way people can see and you can hear us talking about it, but also you can see.
We'll start with spelt.
Yeah. And so spelt has a lot of protein in it, 10.6 grams per serving. That's about equivalent to your average protein bar, not the higher protein bars, but your average protein bar. It is high in manganese, phosphorus, niacin, magnesium, zinc, and iron. Now, we're only going to include the nutrients that these grains are high in. They may contain, and they do contain other nutrients, but at lower levels. So we're just going to discuss the high levels of nutrients in these particular grains.
We soak our spelt prior to eating, but you can sprout, ferment, different things, reduce the
phytic acid.
Phytic acid.
It's PHY right here. Phytic acid, which can reduce the absorption of iron and zinc. So when you soak it, sprout, or ferment, it helps reduce the amount of this phytic acid so that it doesn't interfere with the absorption of iron and zinc, especially when you're fighting off illness or you're anemic. That's going to be real important. Our guides have recommended spelt because it's an energy booster. They recommended that we cook it, and we cook it whole spelt berries in water and eat it about 3 times a week. It helps to improve energy levels. Like if you're convalescing, you're low, or you're just low energy, it may help you because it has a lot of good carbs in it for energy.
Yeah, and quinoa. That's
Kamut.
Kamut. That's Kamut.
And again, the brand name of the kamut here, grown here in the US, is Khorasan. Kamut also has 10 grams of protein. And what is really remarkable here is that kamut has 100% of the recommended daily value of selenium. And we're going to get into selenium and why that's so important because, well, let me talk about it now.
Most selenium and zinc.
Yeah.
The body. We know
people
that.
who are hospitalized now as a result of the CV virus that is going around have been found to be low in zinc and low in selenium and low in vitamin D. And so this is a very good grain. Kamut is a very good grain to beef up your level of selenium. The other thing is that selenium is best absorbed from food sources as opposed to supplements. Our body is not absorbing the supplements, the pills that we take, as well as what we're getting out of the food. So this would be a great one to take during these times.
Yeah.
And it also has zinc in it too, which is zinc helps to reduce the viral replication within the cell.
Yeah, we know how good zinc is.
Yeah.
Now, farro wheat, actually we kind of like farro.
Yeah, it's kind of a nutty sort of flavor. It's also goes by emmer, and that's higher in protein.
Yes, it is. It's 13 grams of protein compared to 10 grams of the other two.
It's also high in niacin, zinc, and magnesium. And we'll get into that a little bit.
But it helps reduce the risk of heart attacks.
Because it's high in antioxidants. and certain cancers. It helps reduce the risk of certain cancers. So the next one's called einkorn,
Einkorn.
and that's a
Even though it's
German
not
word.
spelled like einkorn.
But look at this protein here.
18.2 grams of protein. That's
This
huge.
this is huge. Einkorn is one of those super grains. This is about equivalent to your higher protein bars. And look at this of lutein, 213% of the recommended daily value of lutein, 76% of the recommended daily value of manganese. And then it's also higher in riboflavin, which is B12, zinc, phosphorus, magnesium, thiamine, niacin,
Yeah.
iron, vitamin
Well,
B6,
tell a little bit about leucine, how
lutein.
lutein, how good it can help, though,
So-
especially when you're aging.
Yeah, so lutein helps with eye health, in particular degeneration of the tissue of the eyes. And so it helps prevent the development of cataracts and also macular degeneration, which tends to, if I remember right, tends to run in families. So if you've got macular degeneration that goes in your family, you might want to get some einkorn. It does have a lot of, it's high value nutrients in it. And so it also contains manganese, which helps control blood sugars, and it increases specifically blood flow to the brain, which may help reduce seizures and may help with other cognitive disorders. So if you increase blood flow, the brain is working much more optimally.
Yeah, so
Um,
the next one,
now,
I like the way it's spelled.
it also has this manganese has the function of helping to make thyroid hormones. So this is particularly important for people who have low thyroid or thyroid disease. You may want to incorporate einkorn into your diet because of the manganese.
Yeah.
It's a powerful antioxidant that reduces the risk of heart disease, inflammation,
which is
and-
extremely important again.
yes, and cell damage. And you start to see developing this pattern where these grains start to,
Start to
have a
affect your
repeating
inflammation
pattern
issue, yeah.
of reducing inflammation,
Because
reducing cell damage.
inflammation causes a lot of our issues.
Mhm.
Especially when we get older, inflammation causes a huge amount of issues in the body.
Yeah, many diseases are spawned off of inflammation, and heart disease is one of them.
Yeah, the last one I like on the sweet side is Freeca. How did they come up with that name, Freeca?
These grains
But-
come from all over the world. It's interesting when you start to dive into it and doing a little research. Some are coming out of Africa, some out of
Asia.
Asia, some are coming out of Italy. And so it's a kind of a world tour when you start to investigate these grains
Yeah.
and check them out. But
But Freeca
look
is
at this.
really high in
Freeca
protein.
is a green wheat. They harvest it a little bit early. I think that they roast it, if I remember right. And look at this protein, 20 grams of protein. It's also very high in iron, again in lutein and zeaxanthin, which combined, they both work for eye health and preventing degenerative diseases of the eyes, such as cataracts and macular degeneration.
Yeah, now if you already have macular degeneration, it's not going to stop it, but it may slow it down enough that you won't lose your sight quite as quickly.
It's all about prevention though, isn't it? And so now we're getting into the true grains.
Yeah, grains, millet. Everybody has heard of these grains, millet.
Millet comes out of the East Asia area, and it traditionally was used before rice was introduced, and then rice replaced it. But millet is actually much more nutritious than rice,
yeah.
especially white rice, which white rice is found pretty much every culture that eats a lot of white rice, you're also going to find diabetes.
Yes.
So millet contains large amounts of manganese, magnesium, phosphorus, calcium, thiamine. It contains antioxidants and anti-inflammatories.
Again, anti-inflammatory.
Yeah, see that pattern?
Uh-huh.
It contributes to bone, heart, and blood vessel health and integrity, helps with muscle contractions and nerve function, and contains, again, phytic acid, which is found in spelt, which can interfere with the absorption of iron and zinc, but is mitigated again by soaking millet overnight in water, just like you would with spelt.
Barley, everyone's familiar with barley. You can get that pretty much anywhere.
Beef and barley soup.
Oh, yeah, I don't care for beef and barley soup. But
I have to add this, sometimes, we're just not crazy about these sort of things, and we tend to not eat them, and our diets can range from really terrible to, really good, and everything in between. However, when you start to get really into your spiritual path and you start to really want to improve your health, and in these times with these diseases floating around is particularly important, you start to really focus on foods that provide certain nutrient value to prevent your getting sick, or to prevent your developing cancer, or to help you to fight certain cancers. So for those of you who have cancer, if you Google it, you can find all kinds of foods that will help in the
defeating the cancer.
Yes, and keeping it from returning.
Yes.
And so do check that out, dive deep into that subject, and start to look at food as a way of supporting your physical health.
Barley contains large amounts of selenium and iron and thiamine and magnesium, which are all working together. See how the common pattern of what these different wheats and grains have working together, which human race is lacking right now with the foods that they have.
Yeah.
So
and a lot of people are very low in magnesium. So that's going to,
older, it seems like your magnesium wanes.
It's going to interfere with your heart health and irregular heartbeats. It's going to cause your muscular strength to decline, your mentation, the ability to think. All of that's going to decline when your magnesium levels are low.
Yeah, so you should start these at least when you're 50, if not before.
You should be starting them early.
Early.
Get your kids on them.
Yeah, well, that's a lot, but at least
now,
the
other thing I have to say here is that if you have a grain mill, which you can buy at farm stores, you can buy these little hand crank grain mills. You can get the big fancy ones for $500 that you plug into electricity too. But for all intents and purposes, a hand grain mill could probably do the job, and then throw it in the blender if you want to get it finer. Yeah. But you can take these grains and use them instead of the regular flour that you use at the grocery store, and make bread and different things, your desserts. I like to exchange half the sugar for some non-calorie or 0-calorie natural sweetener like stevia. There's erythritol. There's a number of them out there, monk fruit. So that
we use a lot of natural honey from this area.
Yeah, natural honey. But sometimes those, they're natural sweeteners that are 0-calorie, but sometimes they leave that kind of a chemical aftertaste. And if you leave a little bit of the sugar in and cut it by half and substitute it with a 0-calorie natural sweetener, then you don't have that residual aftertaste, and it's not as sweet, which to me is more appealing,
Well,
where it's mildly sweet.
yeah, let's go to Tef.
Yes, teff is another super grain.
And 13, a little over 13 grams of protein. Another fairly good protein, like some of your wheats, not extremely high in protein, but it's pretty much average protein.
It's a good amount.
But 402%,
Look at that.
402%
Of the daily
of the
value,
daily value of manganese,
manganese. Yeah. Look at this.
90% the daily value of copper. That's the first one I've seen copper. But you don't think about it, but we need copper.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We don't need a lot of it, but we
do
need it.
need copper. Then 98% of the daily value of vitamin C.
And
Vitamin C is so important.
this is the one grain that contains vitamin C and a high amount of it. So 98%, that's almost 100% of the entire day's
dose.
worth of vitamin C that's recommended.
Yeah, 44% magnesium, 43 of iron, 34 of phosphorus, and 33% again of zinc.
Mhm. So that is a really good one to have on hand too. Now, oats, we don't give oats enough
No,
credit.
but people they think the quick cook oats are the one. That's not the one.
No, you don't want to get the instant. You don't want to get the quick cooking because all of the nutrients have been leached out of it in that process. So look at this. We're talking about the old-fashioned oats. 191% of the recommended daily value of manganese. Manganese is very important to control of blood sugars, and if you aren't already diabetic, pushing diabetes off, pushing it down the road. And so manganese is very important for blood sugar control. Then we have 41% of phosphorus, and it's also high in magnesium, copper, iron, zinc, thiamine, and contains antioxidants and polyphenols, which reduces blood pressure and dilates the blood vessels, reducing the risk of heart attack and stroke. So this is really important.
Yeah, also an anti-inflammatory,
Mhm.
an anti-itching, anti-itching component.
That's why they have that
Yeah, that's
Aveeno you put in your bathtub when
Yeah.
people get the chicken pox and you have an oatmeal bath with Aveeno,
Yeah, that's
because
where it comes
it helps with itching. And it also has probiotics, which are the fibers. Most of these have probiotics for the good gut health.
from. Yeah. So the one that we been discussing was the sorghum.
This was recommended by our guides.
Yeah, our guys recommend sorghum because it was basically used for animals. Basically
Here in the
cows and
States,
stuff here in the States.
Historically, our guides said that the ones who understood the value of sorghum promoted it to the commoners as fodder so that they wouldn't eat the sorghum. So they would eat the food with less nutritional value. Let's put it that way. However, you still see it being eaten in Africa and Asia and across Europe. So it doesn't seem to have been promoted as fodder for animals in those regions. But evidently here in the US, it has, and it continues to be grown in large quantities for cattle and
It
for
has
animals.
to be grown in cool weather, otherwise it becomes toxic.
There's a toxin that's produced, at least for humanity. I don't know about animals, but so we recommend that you get it from like the northern states where it's grown up in the northern states. And we were recommended to use the Dura variety, which is the red sorghum, which is what they said was brought from the stars. And so evidently, the other beings that don't live here brought this from outside and introduced it to humanity.
Yeah. So how much do we use sorghum? Be somewhat cautious.
Yeah, and so it's not something you're going to eat a whole bowl full. What we do is we'll take a combination of grains and cook them up into like a porridge that we eat as a cereal for breakfast. And each one has, some specific qualities that we just kind of add to the pot. It also gives you different textures and sizes and tastes. And then we'll throw in nuts and fruit and some honey, maybe a dollop of yogurt on top to get your gut health in there too, but and your probiotics or your biotics.
Sorghum, we only, after everything is cooked in a bowl, with everything with the fruit, strawberries, blueberries, etc. Then she'll take a half a teaspoon. That is 1/2 teaspoon for each bowl and sprinkle it over the top.
So the sorghum is not cooked because, again, it can produce a toxin that's not good for humanity. But we only need this little tiny amount. And so a half a teaspoon sprinkled over the other grains that have already been cooked. And you can add all your other goodies that you want to put into your cereal in the morning. And that is just 3 times a week.
Now we're going to go into seeds that are used as cereals, ancient pseudo grains. So right off the top, everybody's familiar with quinoa.
Quinoa.
Quinoa. I do that every time. Anyway, it's a little bit low on the protein, but contains 8 amino acids, which makes a complete protein.
Yeah, so it makes up for a slightly lower amount of protein by having all 8 essential amino acids that make a complete protein. What an essential amino acid is that these are not amino acids our body can manufacture from other things. So we have to get it from outside sources, and so that our body has the right proteins to build tissue and structures within the body to heal and to make new cells. We need that protein, and it all comes from the building blocks of these amino acids. Some we can make ourselves, and it's made from other nutrients that we are eating, but these we cannot. And so quinoa has all 8 of those essential amino acids, and it's called a complete protein. So it's also high in manganese, magnesium, phosphorus, folate, zinc, and contains quercetin. So this is another one that's very important in our particular times with the CV. So quercetin has a strong affinity for ACE2 receptors on the cells, particularly the cells within the lungs, the heart, and the blood vessels, some other areas as well. And so what it does is it binds to that receptor, and it blocks the attachment of the virus so that it reduces the spread and invasion of the virus into the cells. So we have better outcomes with quercetin. And it also helps reduce inflammation,
which is also important.
Mm-hmm.
It has anti-cancer properties.
Yeah.
Okay, so along with the others. So amaranth, the medium grain protein. So it's higher again in manganese and iron and magnesium. Those are all important and anti-inflammatory again,
Mm-hmm.
over and over.
Yeah, we see, and if you don't like one particular grain, it's real easy to just pick up another one that's more appealing to
Such as
you.
buckwheat.
Buckwheat is another one of those super grains. This is, it's, even though it says buckwheat, it is not really a wheat.
No, it is it's a seed.
It's a
cereal
pseudo
seed.
cereal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah, it's not really a
it's a
wheat,
seed.
but it's, again, it's
Look at
contains
that.
the daily value of manganese, 11%, but 96% of magnesium
And
daily value.
yeah, magnesium is very important for muscle contraction, nerve conductivity, your heart. It's very important for your heart
Yeah.
because when your magnesium levels are off, your heart does all kinds of wacky things that it's not supposed to do. And 14 grams of protein.
Yeah, so it contains a lot of the things that the prior ones that we just got through
Mhm.
going over.
It's also high in niacin
Yeah.
and riboflavin, iron, phosphorus, potassium, copper, and
Yeah,
selenium.
this is the second one that has copper.
Yeah, and selenium. Selenium's another one that has people who are low in selenium have usually are the ones who end up in the hospital. So along with low vitamin D and low quercetin. So,
Yeah.
you know, this is a dietary thing. You know, our outcomes and how we survive have a huge amount to do with our diets.
Yeah, so with that, with the antioxidants and the anti-inflammatories, they all throw in the same, in the same pot.
Mhm.
And when you eat most of these together, it has to do something good to your body.
Yeah.
The chia, we have chia seed once in a while.
We have it on
You can always have
our ancient grains that we
Yeah,
cook
you
up.
can always have a chia pet or whatever. But the chia seeds are high in calcium. And calcium helps your stomach upset, like with
Mhm.
Tums.
Yeah.
So take Tums, you take calcium, which is basically Tums, that's what it is.
But calcium, magnesium, and sodium are very important in our nerve function and the ability of our muscles to be able to move and to do the things they need to do, which is stimulated by the nerves. So if your nerves don't have the right, say, if you're low in magnesium, you're going to be weak, you're going to have a tendency to fall, you know, so it directly affects your muscles, but it also affects this muscle right here and your ability to think.
Cognitive, it affects your cognitive thinking.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so those who are gluten-free, what can they take?
So you can quinoa, I said it right today, millet, sorghum, amaranth, teff, and buckwheat are all recommended
For people who are trying to stay away from
gluten-free
gluten.
products.
Now,
you can get that as gluten-free.
there are some of these grains for people who are as very, very, very sensitive to gluten, who absolutely can't have any. You'll have to do your homework, and many people already know what they can and cannot take. But generally speaking, for those who's they're sensitive to gluten, but they're not hypersensitive to gluten, they can take these grains here and shouldn't have a problem with them.
So we're going to look at what these nutrients do.
Okay.
How do they interact with your body?
So zinc, and most of these are what most of these grains contain. Not all of them, but
Quite a few. Yeah.
and they may be in smaller amounts. Some of, like I said, we only mentioned the ones that were highest for those grains.
And that's teff and farro and kamut, spelt. Those are all higher in zinc.
In zinc. Okay, so zinc participates in gene expression, making of enzymes, and improves immunity by way, when your zinc levels are up, the viruses have a very, very difficult time of replicating in the cells.
Yeah, well, zinc is also found in shellfish, which is
Okay.
eggs and dairy,
Mhm.
and all these different seeds that we eat. So even mushrooms, asparagus, and broccoli, and garlic.
Yeah.
Those are all, you
Yeah.
can grow, well, you can't grow your own shellfish, but.
Well, I
leg-
suppose you
legumes,
could, you could have your crawfish
Live on the
out,
ocean.
out in your pond.
And legumes. but
Or in your
most of
backyard.
these things you can actually, either somebody around you grows them or produces them, or you grow them yourself.
And so zinc also is very important in the growth and development of children.
Yeah,
So
the iron.
we want to make sure that
You give
moms
enough-
and dads
zinc,
understand their kids also need zinc for proper growth.
And iron, I remember people used to cook in iron skillets to
Yeah.
get their iron, but they don't do that anymore.
Yeah, because we always fall into the newest fad when it comes to cooking, just like everything else. And the newest cookware. But if you are iron deficient, you're going to have anemia and you're going to be tired, and you're not going to be able to think very well. So these grains do contain varying levels of iron, and you can always cook in your iron skillets, which is
Yeah.
good.
Vitamin B1 and B3, B6 and B9. Normally you don't hear about the B vitamins.
Mhm. So B1 or thiamine is involved in the movement of electrolytes and functions of the nervous system. Just like I mentioned a few minutes ago, you have to have the sodium, potassium,
Yeah, so-
magnesium in order for the nerves to work correctly, for the heart to be able to contract and your muscles to contract. So those are found in sorghum, oats, millet, and barley. And then there's some other foods listed there that we're not going to mention that you can go
Yeah,
through.
there's-
This is actually a printable version. So when you open the link up, go ahead and you can download it and print it. And so you have a hard
you
copy
have
of it.
a hard copy of what you need, is a
Mhm.
hard copy of this.
Yeah.
That you can read the different vitamins and what they contribute to.
So
there's a lot.
niacin, a lot of people understand niacin because it helps to lower cholesterol and improve heart health. And it also lowers your triglycerides. We're going to skip on B vitamins found in sorghum. And there's some other foods there we've listed that you can look into later. Folate, which the synthetic version is folic acid, and childbearing women know that they're supposed to take folic acid while they're pregnant and early, even before they become pregnant, to prevent neural tube defects, which is spinal cord defects in the developing baby. And so that is very important to make sure your levels are up sufficiently, even before you get pregnant. It's needed for the production of red blood cells and the formation of the baby's brain, skull, and like I said, the spinal cord. The deficiency in folate can lead to certain type of anemia, especially in women. And quinoa is high in folate. But there are other vegetables, other foods that you can check here that we've included that you can look at to increase your intake of folate. So the last one is quercetin. There was that
Quercetin.
pause. So quercetin is found in,
Well, we take quercetin, but the quinoa and buckwheat, quercetin is found in an antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, which is again so important, reduces risk of heart diseases, which the population has its share of it right now.
yes.
So there was researching in Alzheimer's, or researching it, use in Alzheimer's and cancer, especially lung cancers.
Yeah. And it can be used for arthritis because of the anti-inflammatory effect.
And you can get that in a higher form besides that, but you can get it
In a
pill form,
supplement.
a supplement.
And
form.
we recommend you try and get supplements that, one, don't come from China, but secondly, supplements that are most mimic nature or come out of nature, if at all possible. One thing I found about quercetin is that it also kills cancer cells, which I found very interesting, and helps control blood sugar. In the wake of CVE, quercetin, like I said earlier, has been found to strongly bind to the ACE2 cell receptors, blocking entry of these viruses that help to minimize infection.
You have to really, if you're taking blood thinners, Corsica can react with blood thinners, so you don't.
Yeah.
You want to check with your physician about taking
Mhm.
Corsica.
And also it can react with some antibiotics, and they recommend not taking over 1,000 milligrams because it may
So before you,
cause some
yeah.
damage to the kidneys.
so before you take Corsica, check with your physician on the drugs that you're taking. That it will react to that
Sorry about that.
particular drug. Yeah.
So we hope that you found this interesting. Some people really gravitate to this information, others don't. But it does have applications for today's world and the diseases that are floating around. So we would encourage you to contemplate it. Again, we're going to leave the link down below, so you can print that up and you can have a hard copy of it, because you can't remember it all. You have to refer back to it, put it on your refrigerator.
Okay.
If you would like to receive our videos, we try to get them out once a week unless we have obstructions like computers that don't work. Then
We've never had that issue.
sign up for our video blog at our website, verdience.com. We'll leave the name down below.
Okay, thanks for being with us today.
Have a good day, and peace be with you on your journey to enlightenment. Take care.